Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday Learning Bhagavatam class. Today we'll be talking on Canto 9, Liberation, Chapter 15, Paraśurāma, the Lord Warrior Incarnation, and our guest speaker is Nitai Prabhu. Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for taking your time out, and over to you, Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna, Dharmendra Prabhu, thank you as always for engaging me in devotional service and in the service of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam and the service of all the Vaishnavas who gathered here on this Thursday evening, for some of you, Thursday afternoon for others of us. Yeah, it's always a great honor and privilege. So I know that I think you all read through the verses already, right? I always forget this.
Yes, Prabhu.
So you're kind of already familiar with the whole section, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, all right. So I'll just try to present a little bit on some of the points that are there. And we'll begin by first offering prayers to the previous acharyas and to the lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna and his eternal consort, taking shelter at their divine lotus feet and praying for some empowerment, some wisdom, so that I can be of use as an instrument, so that I can understand more deeply myself and also assist others in seeing more deeply into the scripture. Om Gyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Gena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Gena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Sha Shri Rupam Sagrijatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sarvetam Savadutam Harijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Titanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Nitai Gauda Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. So Hare Krishna, everyone. It's my great honor and privilege and pleasure to be with all of you. Before we begin, I would just like to seek blessings from all of the assembled Vaishnavas that you see fit to bestow your mercy upon me, so that I can speak something relevant and bona fide from the pages of this most exalted scripture, the Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Only by the mercy of Vaishnavas is anything possible, so I am therefore seeking your blessings. Hare Krishna. So, dear devotees, today we will be reading. Now, just need to share my screen. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so I think you should be able to see my screen now, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, I see what's happened now. Yeah, somehow Zoom, they always are trying to improve these things, so they have improved it so that when I'm sharing my screen, I can't see all of you. So anyway, I'll present. If anyone has a question, or when we do some interaction along the way, then I will somehow or other figure it out. So we're discussing this beautiful chapter, chapter 15 of the ninth canto, which is called Liberation. The ninth canto of the Bhagavatam, probably in my opinion, the opinion of acharyas, different devotees, one of the most intriguing cantos of the entire Bhagavatam. And because it's preparing us to enter into the 10th canto. Srila Prabhupada explains at the beginning of the Bhagavatam in his introduction that one should read systematically from the first canto through the ninth canto before entering into the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. And Srila Prabhupada confirms that if one does this, then one will be sufficiently God realized in order to enter into and hear the pastimes of Lord Krishna without having a consciousness and mentality that is, let's say, adversely affected by the modes of material nature. So this is quite a tall order in one sense, or quite a profound benediction that Srila Prabhupada is giving, that we will be sufficiently God realized if we read systematically through. So the point of the 10th or the ninth canto and the title of Liberation is to really, at just before entering into the 10th canto, to present topics that actually really, in many ways, challenge our, you could say, mundane thinking system. And to share what that means, mundane thinking system or mundane consciousness. When I first read the Bhagavad Gita, I was thinking, I finished and I thought, I don't get it. I thought this was meant to be a book about yoga and meditation and peace and love and, all things spiritual. Like I was just speaking to a lady yesterday. I met her just in a shop and on the street. We were talking and she kept saying, I know you're very spiritual. And because she thought I was very spiritual, she had a whole load of assumptions that went with that idea of spirituality, some of which may be correct and some of which may not be correct. Oftentimes, going back to the example of the Bhagavad Gita, when I first read it, I thought, but this whole book was kind of about a war. And in the end, Krishna seemed to be encouraging Arjuna to fight. And I thought he would convince him to not fight and to go to the forest and to renounce and all of these things. And in essence, the Bhagavad Gita is also a test and a challenge of Arjuna's consciousness of what he thinks may be the idea of a natural spiritual outcome. But Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, mandates to him, or encourages him rather, that actually the highest spiritual thing for you to do is to fight. And why? Because that's your nature. And this is what we're going to be discussing a bit about today. But for many of us, that may challenge us how it can be understood to be spiritual when we're encouraged to fight or kill or do something like that. And this way, Srila Prabhupada also used to criticize Gandhi, who would walk around carrying a Bhagavad Gita, professed to be a strong follower of the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, yet preached ahimsa. And Prabhupada would say that the Bhagavad Gita doesn't teach us the kind of ahimsa that he was preaching. The Bhagavad Gita actually teaches us to fight. So in that way, sometimes we may have let's say, a spiritual misconception or a misconception around the ideas of spirituality. And the ninth canto really is such a powerful canto for challenging certain conceptions that we have of what is right and wrong, what is spiritual, what is correct and what is incorrect. And this chapter especially, the chapter which really begins to introduce or does introduce the Shakti avatar, the plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is known as Paraśurāma, given the name Ram and then Parasha, meaning like the axe. So the axe wielding avatar. So this is the ninth canto and the 15th chapter. Let's see if I can move this out of my way. Okay, so we're going to attempt to discuss 5 points from this chapter. And as I've been told that you've already read through the chapter, I'll highlight a few verses, but we're not going to go through it in its entirety. So the 5 points will be, first, we're going to look at qualities or certain aspects of natures. And this is a very, very, very deep topic, which we could spend the whole talk basically on that. We're going to look at the principle of determination. Yes, oh, I see this slide got messed up. Okay, I'm sorry. This is not correct. Correct things. Anyway, forgiveness is the last one, but then we're going to look at envy and jealousy as one, and revenge. So 3 is envy and jealousy, and 4 is revenge. So this chapter opens up with the kind of lineage, which many chapters, whole chapters, sometimes 2 chapters in the Bhagavatam will just discuss the lineage of certain persons. The first time I read through the Bhagavatam, I was thinking, oh God, why do I want to read all these names, most of which I couldn't even pronounce, still can't even pronounce many of them all the way through. Why are these important? Why do I care about this? Then I was present in one lecture, and a senior devotee was explaining that actually we should read those chapters with deep enthusiasm, and we should try to pronounce each and every name, knowing that each and every person whose name is listed in the Bhagavatam is certainly a great soul. And just by calling out their names, just by remembering them or hearing them, that will be beneficial and purifying for us. And imagine if your name was in the Bhagavatam. Of course, some of us may have spiritual names. I think I saw someone on the call named Renuka. So if our name is in the Bhagavatam, we would be very excited. We would tell everyone, hey, my name's in the Bhagavatam. You should read the Bhagavatam. Where is it? Well, it's kind of in the 4th canto and one of the obscure chapters. But just to have your name in the Bhagavatam is auspicious. So therefore, those personalities are not just normal personalities. They are extraordinary personalities. So we should, with enthusiasm, read their names. And we're hearing the lineage, specifically at one point coming to Satyavati, but starting with King Gadi, coming from I think Puru, and like that, Pururava. So then coming to King Gadi, and King Gadi had a son and a daughter. And his son was Vishwamitra. And we'll touch a little bit on Vishwamitra because it has to do with natures and qualities. And he had a daughter named Satyavati. And so his daughter, Satyavati, eventually got married to a sage. Now, she's from Kshatriya background, Kshatriya Varna, and Ruchik is a rishi, so he is a Brahmin. And so they got married, but there's a whole thing we'll discuss also around that. From them came a son named Jamadagni, and Jamadagni married Renuka, and from Renuka, a son was born named Paraśurāma. And of course, we know in the past time that it's described that first King Gadi didn't really feel that Ruchik Rishi was a suitable husband for Satyavati. So he said, well, if you want to marry my daughter, you have to bring a dowry. And this isn't uncommon in traditional Vedic culture, the idea of a dowry or the idea of some sort of a test. Swayamvar is also often the terminology that is used. Arjuna had to win the hand of Draupadi through performing something at her Swayamvar, which was a competition to see who was actually the most qualified to win the hand. And of course, one can understand this if a father is very protective of his daughter. He wants the best for his daughter. Any parent wants the best for their child. And so therefore, he set a dowry for Rishi Ruchik. And he said, you have to bring me 1,000 horses that shine like the moonlight, that are identical in their exalted quality, except they have one ear that's black and one ear that's white. It doesn't matter which one, something like that. And so you can imagine that immediately Rishi Ruchik, he understood the mentality of King Gadi, and he could have been quite disturbed by that situation, and he could have been put off, and he could have just went away thinking, this is ridiculous, preposterous, I can't do that. But actually he didn't. He went to Varuna and then he managed to acquire these horses and offer them as the dowry, and then Satyavati became his wife. Later, the wife of King Gadi and Satyavati approached Ruchik Rishi and requested that they both wanted to have a son. And so in this way, Rishi Ruchik, he prepared the mystical formula to give to them, the potion, the hyacinth, the food that they were to eat that would impregnate them and provide them with the child that they wanted. But the mother of Satyavati, thinking that Rishi Ruchik was going to give her the best child, switched them around, and she ate that portion and left the other portion for her daughter. So we can see there's a certain mentality also that's going on there, both in King Gadi and his wife. There's a little bit that, you could say it's certainly not pure devotion, that they're both tainted in a certain way by a strong desire to have their way and to manipulate the material energy. So unfortunately, Rishi Ruchik had prepared these portions for each of them for Satyavati to have a Brahminical son, and for the mother of Satyavati, the wife of King Gadi, to have a Kshatriya son. So after they ate it, they found out, they were told, and then Satyavati said, but I don't want to have a ferocious son who's like a Kshatriya. I wanted to have a Brahminical son. So he said, okay, we'll skip a generation, and then your grandson will be a ferocious Kshatriya. So like that, we see that Jamadagni was their son, and he was very much a Brahmin, very much a saintly sadhu, and he married Renuka, and from them was born Paraśurāma, who had that uh, constitution of a Kshatriya. So like that, this is the pastime. So we may be a little bit familiar with the story of Vishwamitra, who was the son of King Gadi, and who eventually he was actually a Kshatriya. He was a magnificent warrior, great king, and he eventually became equal to the sage Vashishta. And much of this pastime is told in the Ramayana. And as I was reading through this and starting, which I love to do, I'm so grateful to be given the opportunity to give these classes. I just always feel like I want to have hours and hours and hours to study and prepare. And there's really never enough, it feels like there's never enough time. But as soon as you open this up, the sage Vashishta and the sage Vishwamitra, these are two prominent personalities that are both there in the Ramayana. They're mentioned in the Bhagavatam. And to know more and more about these personalities, to dive deep into these pastimes. But just in this, short amount of time that we have skimming on the surface. So Vishwamitra was actually a king, and he approached Vashishta, was very, very gracious and respectful to Vashishta. And then he also noticed, interestingly enough, as will come up in the pastime from today, that Vashishta had a Kamadhenu cow that was like a wish-fulfilling cow that could fulfill all desires and provide so many things. And Vishwamitra asked for this cow, and it, Vashishta didn't want to give the cow. And then it eventually turned into a bit of a tit for tat, where we see that this principle of natures, which we're going to discuss a little bit in a moment, came into play because Vashishta was very much a pure Brahmana. And Vishwamitra was very much a Kshatriya. So in the end, Vishwamitra, you could say, kind of got what he wanted, but he was also ruined because ultimately the Brahminic Brahmantajas, the Brahminical potency is much more powerful than that of the Kshatriya. And it's described that the Brahmins, they depend on Krishna to empower them. Their potency comes from Krishna, whereas the Kshatriyas, their potency and their strength ultimately comes from their own physical prowess and their own mental prowess and mental strength. So like this, ultimately the Brahminical nature is much stronger. But Vashishta, to cut a long story short, or not Vashishta, Vishwamitra, to cut a long story short, he performed severe austerities, which were interrupted at one point by the tinkling ankle bells of Menaka and Apsara, and he got really distracted for a while. And then he went back to his meditation, and he meditated for thousands of years, and eventually Lord Brahma blessed him that you have now achieved sort of like an honorary level of being a Brahmin. In fact, he said, you've become a greater Brahmin than even Vashishta. So like that, then him, Vishwamitra, and Vashishta, ultimately in the end, they became friends, although Vishwamitra was performing these austerities for the purpose of trying to defeat Vashishta. But once he attained these Brahminical qualities, his consciousness and his nature also changed and adjusted. So that brings us to a nature of the other personality in this pastime, and you could say the star of the show, which is Paraśurāma. And he was the son of Jamadagni, and who was a great Brahmana, and he himself had a Kamadhenu cow. But so he was born in the Varna of a Brahmana. So he actually was born as a Brahmana. He performed the activities of a Brahmana. He studied like a Brahmana. He had, in one sense, you could say, the temperament for the most part of a Brahmana, and was able to function in that space. But his nature changed when he saw something that was unjust happen. When the Kamadhenu cow was stolen by Kartavir Arjuna, then the Kshatriya nature came out of Paraśurāma, and he went and basically annihilated Kartavir Arjuna, and wreaked havoc upon him, actually cutting off all of his 1,000 arms and then eventually decapitating him, which very much upset his sons, but you'll hear about all that in the next chapter. And so Paraśurāma returned, and his father was not very happy with him, in fact. And he began to preach to him and explain to him that it's inappropriate. As Brahmanas, we don't act like this. So the main point I wanted to bring up from just this little section is a point about qualities and natures that we have. So inside of this, we can see that we all are born, the Bhagavad Gita teaches us that we're all born with certain qualities. Arjuna had the quality of a Kshatriya. That was his nature. That was his temperament. One might say that was his dharma, his constitutional position. In the Bhagavad Gita also explains that we may have our eternal nature, our eternal constitution, which is that of a spirit soul. But when we're in this body, we also have our temporary nature. So Arjuna is an eternal associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, yet he in this life, or in specifically the appearance in the Bhagavad Gita, his temperament is that of a Kshatriya. But he wanted to act like a Brahmana. And Arjuna was encouraging him not to. He was saying that your temperament is that you're a Kshatriya, you're a warrior, you're a protector, and you should now therefore protect. But he wanted to accept the idea of renunciation and detachment as meaning that I should go to the forest. But Krishna advised him that if you go to the forest, you will not be protected by me because you will not be acting according to your nature. So we have to see what are those qualities that devise and decide how we should conduct ourselves. Because according to our nature, we don't all have to act the same way. I often tell the story. When I joined with my best friend, and he and I were like best friends, but we also argued with each other so much because we had different natures. And he was always trying to convince me that I should be like him, and I was always trying to convince him that he should be like me. And somehow we could never find the balance. In fact, one time we did an experiment where we said for 1 week, I'm going to try to act like you and you try to act like me. Now, what did this mean? It meant that his nature was very laid back, very chilled, very take it as it comes. I don't want to say he was lazy. He was very intelligent. He was much more Brahminical, you could say. And my nature was more like, go get it, get out there, make something happen, make plans, create a strategy, and do this. And we tried this for 1 week. I tried to just chill out, relax, take it as it comes. And I became so bored that I was like, God, I just want to do something. And he tried to be like dynamic and active and making plans and doing something. And he became sick. So it just showed us both that actually we're not meant to, we have certain natures, but we still didn't understand it. Then some years later, we came to Krishna consciousness, and we were very fortunate to come in contact with a senior devotee who immediately sat us down and had us read the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, specifically texts 42, 43, and 44, where Krishna is describing the natures of a Brahmin, the natures of a Kshatriya, the nature of a Vaishya and Shudra. And as soon as we read that, we both kind of understood that we had different natures. And in that moment, we realized that it was okay to actually have these different natures. In fact, there probably wasn't going to be much we could do to change them. So we had to sort of conduct ourselves according to these natures. And the senior devotee kind of gave us a lot of encouragement in that way, and helped us to understand that there were different paths for those with different natures and different qualities. Paths, not meaning a Krishna conscious path and a non-Krishna conscious path, but different ways of conducting ourselves, as far as you could say, like our career in Krishna consciousness, which is very important. And I wanted to share that those of you who have had the chance to read or study, hear from Urmila Devi, from her book Career Dharma. It's very, very powerful, very difficult to read on your own, but if you're able to connect with one of the devotees who has done her courses and is a kind of Career Dharma consultant, I couldn't recommend it enough. I think it's very, very useful, very, very helpful to help us to understand what is our nature, and to understand that if we act according to our nature, then we're acting in alignment with Dharma, with religiosity. And if we try to act against it, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, that to do another's duty perfectly is basically irreligious. It's better that we do our own duty imperfectly. So like that. So there are different duties for those who have different natures. So the questions I'm posing here is, what is our nature? Do I know what is my nature? And for many of us, we don't. We may have different understandings. We may think, just because I like to study, that means I must be a Brahmana. Or we may think that because I like to make money, that means I'm a Vaishya. Or I like living on a farm, that means I'm a Vaishya. Or maybe we think, oh, I'm a Sudra because I like to play guitar and sing songs. Whatever it might be, we may classify ourselves in different ways according to one characteristic, but that may not actually be the ultimate truth or case. So I encourage you to really look into this, because once we understand more about what is our true nature and what are the values that drive us, then the more that we act in accordance with that, the more that our lives will line up with the destiny, one might say, that Krishna has in store for us. So like that. So do we act according to that nature, or do we act against it? Carrying on in the one of the verses, or a couple of verses from the Bhagavatam, is King Gadi had a daughter named Satyavati, who a Brahmin sage named Rachita requested. So I shared this already. So, King Gadi was kind of like, well, we're aristocratic Kshatriyas, so you have to bring some dowry. So you should bring 1,000 horses, each as brilliant as moonshine, and having one black ear, whether right or left. So it wasn't a white ear; it was just one black ear. But it didn't matter if it was the right ear or the left ear. And when Gadi made this demand, immediately King Rachika, or Rishi Rachika, could understand the king's mind. He immediately understood that really he doesn't want me to marry his daughter. And as I mentioned, he could have easily been put off at that point. He could have created a whole story within his mind, within his life, that, basically, I'm not good enough. That's a story we often tell ourselves. I'm not good enough. I'm not wanted. These people are shutting me out. I don't fit in here. I don't know if any of you have these stories that go on in your own mind sometimes, but Rishi Richika, he immediately thought, I'm not going to get stopped by this because I actually am attracted to Satyavati. So he immediately went to Varun, and he got the 1,000 horses, and he took them to Gadi, and and basically he was able to marry his daughter. Was able to marry Gadi's daughter, Satyavati. So I was thinking how powerful just this little section is, even though for these sections there aren't really much purports. But for me, when I read it, I thought, it's so easy to get stopped in life. It's so easy to get stopped because of some opposition, because of something someone says, because of a little story that we tell ourselves. So I was thinking, where is it that we get stopped? Where is it that we get stopped? These are reflection questions we can ask ourselves. Where is it that I get stopped in life where I'm not determined enough to carry on, to push through something, to face an obstacle or opposition and overcome it? Are we affected by other people's prejudices? Here we see that King Gadi, he thought that Rishi Richika was like, he wasn't good enough. And that's what he was basically saying. You're not good enough. Here's some impossible task. If you can do this, then you can have the hand of my daughter. So often, whether it's because of the country of our birth, the color of our skin, our gender, our age, it can be so many different things, our religion. Even now, we're in the middle of the World Cup here in America. They don't even know what football is. They think it's American football. The rest of the world plays football. Here they call it soccer. And it's such an eye-opener now for everyone to have to be realizing that the World Cup actually means the world, whereas here in America they play baseball instead of cricket. And they have the World Series, but it's just amongst American teams, and so many confusions here. And so everyone, if you support a certain football team, then people may be prejudiced against that. So how are we affected by other people's prejudices about us, whatever that may be, our externals? Are we able to persevere? I thought, do we persevere or do we perspire? Of course, right now here in America, the temperature is about 38 degrees Celsius. And so perspiring is definitely something that's going on. But we have to persevere. When I was in, I think, 6th grade, 7th grade, maybe it was a little later, maybe it was 9th grade, high school in America, one of my teachers made a comment to me that you'll never be successful. And I said, why do you say that? And she said, because you're not able to persevere. And at that time, I didn't even know what perseverance was. But she said, you have no perseverance. So I asked her, how do you spell that? And I wrote it. I remember writing it down and then looking it up and thinking, no, I do have perseverance. I'm going to persevere. So I don't know, maybe I didn't really turn out to be so successful in so many ways, but I am chanting Hare Krishna, reading Bhagavatam, hanging out with amazing devotees like yourselves. So I would say that's pretty good. But do we persevere or do we give up? Where's the point where we just break, we get stopped, and we can't continue? And, it may be that in our lives, actually, they say that in our spiritual life, we make progress up to a certain point. Then we may get stopped by an anartha, by some unwanted thing in the heart. And we may, in our next life, pick up where we left off. And we come, it's described in one place, Prabhupada says, if you make it up to like 61%, then in your next life you pick up at 62. But you don't make progress. We have to be consistently applying ourselves in devotional service in our spiritual life, persistently and consistently checking our own heart and being in touch with others who can help us to see, help us guide us, encourage us to go deeper and to persevere in our spiritual lives. Because success depends on not getting stopped. At the beginning of the Nectar of Instruction, Srila Prabhupada says that the success in spiritual life depends on the attitude of the practitioner. So we can take this on board, and we can see that Rishi Richard, he had a strong determination to get something that he wanted, and he was able to fulfill that. Even sometimes we can perform miracles, and there's so many things we could say about that. In another section, we see the introduction of this personality, Kartavya Arjuna, and it describes that he thought Jamadagni was more powerful and wealthy than himself, because Jamadagni possessed this Kamadhenu cow, and therefore Kartavya Arjuna and his men, the Hohayas, they weren't very much appreciative of Jamadagni's reception, and on the contrary, they wanted to possess the Kamadhenu, which was useful for the execution of the Agnihotra sacrifice. So we see here that this personality, Kartavya Arjuna, he visited the home of Jamadagni, and he saw that, wow, he's able to serve me so nicely because he has this cow. And because he has this cow, that means he's better than me. And if he's better than me, then, what do they call it? Sour grapes. Then, all these grapes are sour. Oh, your whole reception is rubbish. Everything that you're doing is rubbish. Yeah, I'm not impressed. Not impressed at all. But really, what they wanted his opulence. As Prabhupada says, we want the kingdom of God, but we don't want God. So they wanted the opulences of Jamadagni, but they wanted to get rid of Jamadagni. They couldn't just accept that here is this saintly soul. Here is this saintly person who's in possession of this beautiful cow that he's using. He's engaging in our service so nicely, and with folded palms express deep gratitude and appreciation. No, Kartavya Arjuna couldn't do that. And the Hahayas couldn't do that either. Why? Because they were infected by lust and envy. And therefore, we have to ask ourselves, do I experience this lust and envy in my own life? And how far would I go to have what another possesses? We see the Kartavya Arjuna, he actually abducted the Kamadhenu cow. He caused so much trouble and strife. And on himself and his family, he brought so much devastation and disaster simply because he could not control his lust and envy. All he needed to do was just be grateful, be thankful, be grateful and thankful for what Jamadagni had given, for the reception he had offered him. But no, he couldn't do this, so therefore he wasn't able to overcome his lust and envy. And that is the way that we overcome lust and envy, because we become grateful and we become humble. That when we become humble as the straw on the street, then we can become grateful for whatever is offered to us, no matter how insignificant or how amazing. And Prabhupada is a perfect example of this. He went from living in this very small rooms at the Radha Damodar temple to having huge temples, palaces, staying with very rich, wealthy, exalted people. But Prabhupada was the same person wherever he went, because he was so humble. And he was always just grateful, because he was always seeing Krishna's hand in his life. So like this. So another verse, 9:15:29, as Kartavya Arjuna entered his capital, Mahishmati Puri, he saw Lord Paraśurāma, the best of the Bhrigu dynasty, coming after him, holding a chopper, shield, bow, and arrows. Lord Paraśurāma was covered with black deerskin, and his matted locks of hair appeared like the sunshine. So here we have the rising sun of Paraśurāma, the rise of this personality, who we'll hear more about in the next chapter from the perspective of how he annihilates so many different generations. But here he's coming simply because his father has been disrespected. This is the nature of a Kshatriya. He is righteous, and righteousness has been impeded upon, and therefore there has to be justice. There will be justice. And Paraśurāma, he sought out, in one sense, you could say, revenge for what had been done to his father. And he was not going to take no for an answer. He was not going to get stopped. He was going to annihilate Kartabhira, and he did. But it brings up the question for me that we have to think sometimes, because of lust, because of envy, sometimes we may feel that we've been wronged, and then we want to seek out revenge. And I hope no one here on this call has ever felt like that, but it happens to the best of us. So do we seek revenge easily? Is that what we find coming out of us? Is that an anartha, something that we would like to overcome? Do we find ourselves meditating on what we hope others get in return? I know, speaking sometimes to people, they're like, anyway, Krishna will take care of them. or anyway, their karma is going to come back to them. Or anyway, I hope they get their karma. Like that. Sometimes we can find ourselves in a revengeful mood. And do we really want the best, or do we want the worst for others? Are we hoping that actually there can be a rectification in the other person, and that maybe Krishna will help them to understand how the way that they've acted has caused such pain or hurt in someone else? But I don't wish them that pain or hurt. I just want them I just want the best for them. So like that's something to think about. And I know we're running low on time, so I'm going to move ahead. And the last point that we'll discuss today is forgiveness. So at the end of this whole section, we have Paraśurāma returning, and he returns to speak to his father. And when his father hears what happened, he becomes literally almost disgusted, and he begins to rebuke and chastise Paraśurāma. Now remember, Paraśurāma just went and annihilated this person who could subdue Ravana. Kartabhira actually was able to subdue Ravana. It mentions in this chapter, and it's there in the Ramayana. And so Paraśurāma comes back, and his father Jamadagni starts basically chastising him and correcting him. And he tells him that actually this is not right. It's worse. What you did to kill an emperor, a king, is worse than killing a brahmana. You shouldn't have done it. And you have to repent. You have to perform some penance, and you have to go on pilgrimage for 1 year. And then he makes an important statement which kind of ties quite a few of these points together. He mentions that brahmanas are beautiful when they are forgiving. So if your nature or inclination is that of Brahminical, then you would want to learn to forgive. And this is not easy. Sometimes we say, I can forgive, but I'll never forget. Or we say, forgive and forget. So like this, we have to, those who are Brahmana in nature, they become most beautiful when they're able to forgive. But Kshatriyas, they become beautiful when they're heroic, and when they enter into battle and don't give up and don't get stopped. So that's interesting that it isn't mentioning specifically here that a Kshatriya should also necessarily be forgiving. But of course, we know that we should all be forgiving, depending on time, place, and circumstance. There's different things. But we see here again how natures are determining the ways that our light from inside will shine. That light of Krishna Bhakti and Krishna Prem can shine through. So Vaishyas, when they enrich cultural activities and protect cows. So this is how the Vaishyas shine. how their beauty comes forth when they're performing these activities. And the Shudras, when they are faithful in the discharge of duties that are pleasing to masters or pleasing to others. And Srila Prabhupada continues to explain that thus everyone becomes beautiful by his special qualities. So each of us, if we try to, sometimes we may meet someone, I know I've had this experience numbers of times, and probably I do it myself, is that sometimes we may say to someone, oh yeah, I'm sorry, but we don't really mean it. But if we're genuine in our delivery, if we're genuine in our feeling, in our heart, then that will come across, and that will be a beauty, that will be an emblem of opulence. And Prabhupada continues, and the special quality of the Brahmana, as described here, is forgiveness. Now, a big topic for discussion is that, of course, Jamadagni is a Brahmana, and he's instructing his son, whom also is born in the Brahmana Varna, but whose temperament or whose nature is that of a Kshatriya. And we see how, although instructed, this is a good instruction given to Paraśurāma by his father, but we'll see later in the next chapter that that is not the quality that shines forth from the heart of Paraśurāma, who is not Brahminical, but who is actually Kshatriya in nature. So this is the end, and I'll conclude here, and we can have some little discussion or interaction. Please forgive me for going on for so long. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. That was a wonderful class there. If anyone has any questions, please raise your hand. If I can start off, if that's okay, Prabhu. When you were mentioning time, place, and circumstance, how do we sort of, when we use that to sort of stop ourselves from forgiving, saying, oh, it's all based on time, place, and circumstance, and that's an excuse that we can use because you can say, oh, it says it in the Bhagavatam. What would you say to people to think about and reflect upon?
So if I can repeat back, just so I'm sure that I've understood your question, Dharmendra, which is, I think I understand because it's a natural next question. Basically, what you're saying is, how do we know how to apply Kala Desha Patra, time, place, and circumstance to situations? And how do we know that it's the right application when sometimes we might just be trying to get out of something and quoting Shastra in order to do it?
Correct.
So we're justifying our anartha by quoting Shastra or quoting some situation. So yes, this is and this is why I said this ninth canto, it really challenges the essence of the way that often we think, because a lot of times we may want to paint everything with one brush, or we may think that one size fits all, or that everyone should act the same way. But the very essence of the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita and what's being described here is that it just isn't like that. Not everyone is the same, and not everyone has the same temperament, and we cannot expect the same behavior from everyone. That's difficult for us to handle, because we may think, let's say, if I am Brahminical in nature and I'm supposed to be forgiving, but then I'm dealing with someone else who just doesn't seem to be able to forgive, then we think, well, why should I have to do it? Right? But then that's it's like it's like yeah, I guess I was just trying to think of some example, but somehow football came to mind. Actually, baseball came to mind, but I'll try to apply football because I think most of you are here in that space. But if you're the goalie and you're like, how come I got to stand here in the goal all the time, and those guys get to run around and kick the ball and they get to score goals, and I'm like, I get really upset. Why I'm going to run out and go over there. And as far as I know, I don't know the rules of football so well, but I don't think that the goalie can run to the other end of the field and score a goal. That would probably be, it would probably leave his own goal in defensive, But, I think they're not supposed to cross certain points. I don't know. But anyway, the point is, as a goalie, I have a function. I have a way I have to conduct myself. And if I allow my mind to start to drift into what I think how other people should be acting, then I kind of lose track of the fact that I need to really mainly be worried about how I'm acting. And is this my nature? Now, if I think I'm a Kshatriya and I don't need to forgive anybody because it says in Shastra that only Brahmins forgive, and I'm a Vaishya or I'm a Shudra or I'm a Kshatriya, then I don't need to be forgiving. Then in some circumstances, one might say that could be true, but the essence is likely that it may be more difficult for me to be forgiving because I have this other nature, whereas it might come more natural to someone who is naturally Brahminical, if that makes sense. So it doesn't mean that we don't all need to learn how to forgive. I think this is something that everyone does, and we see in the case with Vishwamitra that he was a Kshatriya who, through his similar to Dhruva's pastime, that they were driven by this Kshatriya nature to do certain things, but then eventually they kind of achieved a kind of higher level of consciousness, and ultimately Vishwamitra forgave Vashishta and was able to kind of be in a different consciousness. But we have to be very careful that we don't try to use Shastra to qualify us acting in a mode of ignorance. I think that's an important thing. While at the same time, we should understand that we may have certain natures that debilitate us in certain ways, but those natures will also enhance us and empower us in other ways. So all of us we're all divine sparks of God's splendor. And whatever shape that's taken in the physical form, inside, we're all divine sparks of God's splendor. And we're trying to shine that light of Krishna, Krishna's beauty, through our actions and our activities. For Arjuna, it meant that he had to go on the battlefield and kill. For Paraśurāma, he had to do the same thing. But Jamadagni, he was like, no, you can take the Kamadhenu cow. I wish you didn't, but he just let him take it. That's not going to be the way that a powerful Vaishya or a Kshatriya is going to be with someone who comes and tries to take something away from them. It's just not going to be in their nature. So Prabhupada, in the end of his days, was really fixed on this idea of Varnashram and really trying to, because he wanted to create a society of Brahmins, but he was realizing that actually we're not all Brahmins. People who were coming, they're not all Brahmins. And even, so therefore Prabhupada really wanted us to understand Varnashram and to build a society that's based on the pillars of Daivi Varnashram, divine Varnashram. Anyway, it's a very big topic. I'm rambling on a bit, and I don't even know if I answered your question, but I'm hoping that I bewildered you enough that you'll just go, yeah.
No, I think there were some good points in that. The question there that you raised about envy and jealousy, one sort of thinks about it themselves and then sort of reflects on it and says, well, I don't feel that I'm envious or I'm jealous. How do you actually understand whether that is within you, if you know what I mean? How can you what proves that? Because if someone thinks that they're not envious, but quite clearly others do, what is the test for yourself to understand?
Yeah, so the way that, because envy and jealousy, ultimately they arise from lust. And lust means the strong desire to enjoy or exploit something or someone for my own personal pleasure. So if I'm finding in my life that it's hard for me to be around certain people, or I find myself very critical of other people and things that they have, ways that they act, then this might be an initial clue that I'm probably a little bit jealous or envious, that I'm feeling insecure and I need to big myself up in my own mind's eye or to those around me to compensate for what I feel that I lack. And I'm seeing that thing in them that I want or I wish I had, so I have to knock them down a few pegs in order for me to be bigger than them. So these are kind of telltale signs. If we're able to like see others and genuinely, and I know some devotees who are just so amazing at this. Immediately, I think of two. One is Vaisheshika Prabhu, the other is Buddha Bhavana Prabhu. That these devotees who they just are always able to glorify other devotees, and encourage the heck out of them, and just see the good, and Matsura, near Matsura, that we're not envious. We have to come to a point where we overcome the propensity to criticize others and to be envious of what someone else has. Instead, we should be like, isn't that amazing that this devotee is able to be like this and do like that? Sure, there may be so many deficiencies. There's deficiencies in everything. Everything in the material world, as we know from Bhagavad Gita, every endeavor is covered by some fault. There's always mistakes. But let's see, what is that glorious thing that person is doing, and try to see more of the white sheet rather than the black spot, like that. Is that okay, Dharmendra?
That's perfect. Thank you, Prabhu. Sadhu Mataji, would you like to ask your question? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for
Sadhu Devi. Hare
Krishna.
She is here all day. She's there in the morning for our Bhakti Center Bhagavatam class, and then she's here whenever I come for these classes. She is just like a honeybee going after the nectar everywhere. Yes, Sadhu Devi.
Thank you. I'm trying just to learn. I don't feel that I have enough time, so I need to know and learn so much as possible. So that's why I'm attending. Have I learned right that Paraśurāma was trained by Lord Shiva, and even the axe he has, he got it from Lord Shiva? And
yes,
and when Lord Shiva gave it, he said that just so you know, the axe going to demand blood. So, and he accepted. He says yes, okay, and he took it. So, and his father, Lord Paraśurāma's father, knew well that he is a Kshatriya, right?
Yeah.
So why was he was, how to say, not pleased that he acted as it was his nature?
Yeah, good point. Mm-hmm. So that's your question?
Yes.
Basically,
why the father didn't like that he acted as his nature?
Yeah. So the the nature of the father is to try to correct the child. At the same time, one might say that, and this is my philosophical speculation. Srila Prabhupada says at the beginning of the what chapter is it? 14th chapter? I think it's 14th chapter, the three modes of material nature in Bhagavad Gita. He says that one can understand this chapter through philosophical speculation. So sometimes we can philosophically speculate, but that the Rishi Richikas, he said that the child would be a ferocious Kshatriya. Now, if someone lets you know before you have a child that your child is going to be a ferocious warrior, right? then you may want to put some systems in place to keep that as contained as possible for as much of the time as possible. So that nature was already in there. But I think my philosophical speculation is that probably Jamadagni wanted to create an environment that would kind of contain that. On a mundane example, it's like the Incredible Hulk, you know? It's like like, I remember when I growing up watching it, Dr. David Bruce Banner, you know, eventually he learned to do meditation to try to keep the Hulk under control, right? So, and we may all have that little Hulk inside of us, but Paraśurāma is, I mean, we see what in the next chapter, we're going to see what Paraśurāma is really capable of when he unleashes. And you can imagine that his father's like, let's just keep that in a nice, sweet place. It's like, no need for you to be like Paraśurāma, the axe wielding. Every day, every morning, you wake up and you're like full on, ferocious Kshatriya. So in that way, I would say he was tempering. He was trying to temper that inclination with some Brahminical qualities, if that makes sense. But I can't give you like 100% Shastric answer. I'm sure there is some saintly sadhu that could, but please forgive me. That's my best philosophical speculation on that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have another question, but I wait. Thank you.
Okay. Janikunya, Mataji, would you like to ask your question, please?
Hare Krishna. Thank you
Hare
again,
Krishna.
once again for one amazing class. Yeah, I think the most difficult thing is, if we're honest, is that, well, what shall I say? I hope I'm not going to be unpopular after this. But I actually think if we're genuinely honest to ourselves, and we will have the answer to how we're feeling and how we react, and talk about envy and jealousy, that's to forgive somebody when you in great friendship perhaps, and then they insult you in front of other people. To me, that is really, really bad. I find that hard to forgive. And the honest feeling is that when you're in that kind of pain, you well, I'm not talking about where I am at now, but I have experienced this, that you wish the other person dead, and I'm sure they feel the same about you. So that's the honesty, I think, that we do not practice. We don't introspect enough to help us to have the real true answer to our predicament.
Very, very powerful, Dinakanya. If I'm understood what you're saying, then basically your statement is we need to be able to be really honest with ourselves. If we're able to be honest with ourselves, then we'll understand and know what's there really genuinely in our heart, and we'll be able to deal with it and work through it. We'll be able to recognize envy and the jealousy and lust and these kind of things, and at least
and
we're able to
other. Yeah.
And what? Honest to the other person. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And we can be deceitful by not saying things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, sometimes the best program isn't necessarily that we walk around telling everyone honestly exactly what we think all the time. That might not necessarily
of course
work.
Not. You'd be infecting the whole situation.
Yeah, and that in itself may show a lack of control and restraint, and also a mentality of thinking that just the way that I see the world is correct, and it's my God-given dharma to correct everyone and try to make them make them better. That may not be our role or our position. But to be able to sit honestly and talk with someone that we feel has offended or upset us or discouraged us or hurt us in some way, that takes a lot of strength, a lot of courage, and also a lot of responsibility to accept that probably I also own a little bit of the problem here. There's a saying I like to quote, that whenever there's a breakdown in a relationship, and two people are butting heads, then I have to own 100% of my 50% of the problem. And then we can hope that the other person begins to own 100% of their 50% of the problem. Then we can come to some solution. But I do appreciate that. Yeah, we have to be honest with ourselves that sometimes I am envious, I am jealous, I am upset, I am hurt. But how we express that, how we deal with it, hopefully it's not like Paraśurāma every time it comes up in our life. That might be a little difficult for us.
Yeah. And I think to self-reflect is important, obviously.
Oh, absolutely.
You're part of that. And what did you do, or what is your part that invite that kind of behavior?
Yes.
That's so after you've done all that, and I suppose, and don't forget your makeup, as you said earlier on,
Yes,
it could
our nature.
it could be also your upbringing, your culture, all that
Absolutely.
sort of thing comes into play. Yes, thank you so much for listening and clarifying and putting me in the picture in a way that I have to look at myself. Yeah.
Thank you for reminding us all. Okay. Dharmendra Prabhu.
Can you take one more question from Sadhvi Mataji, and then we'll...
Okay, one more, but only because it's from Sadhvi.
Thank you. I know a person. This person have gone through many problems, but this person doesn't have ounce of hatred or anger or accusing anyone. This person is just is almost not attached to have this feeling. You know what I mean? So could it be that this is also a nature of this person? That this person doesn't have hatred for the people who abused this person or done this person many wrong. Still, this person doesn't say anything about it. Is not angry. It's not hatred, and so on, and very forgiving. Could it be because it is in nature, or what? Thank you.
Yeah, and what do you think, considering what we just spoke about and read from the Bhagavatam? If someone is able to forgive so easily, that sounds like they may have what kind of nature?
Sattvic, good? Nature of goodness?
Well, it's, goodness, because it's Brahminical. It said that the Brahmins shine and they're most beautiful when they exhibit their forgiveness. And we see that there are people like that are just genuinely not bothered or disturbed when these things come about. And they're like, no, it's okay, They didn't really, Jesus on the cross, he said, forgive them, my Father, they know not what they've done. So this mood of forgiveness seems to come very easy to some who just accept that the Lord is delivering. What is the verse? Tatenu kampam susamikshimano. That, I just happily accept what the Lord is sending to me as a reaction of my past sinful activities, whether I know when it happened or didn't. But Krishna is just sending me a tiny little dose of the medicine that I need, the medicine that I deserve, but the medicine that I need in order to make me better. And if I can accept that with folded palms as the medicine that I need, then Krishna will be pleased. And as the verse says, then entry into the spiritual world becomes my rightful claim. I become the heir to the kingdom of God simply because I'm able to see the Lord's hand even in the most difficult of situations. So that's something for all of us to try to cultivate and develop. But some people, it will be much more natural.
Thank you. This person says it all the time. If the Lord didn't want it to happen, it will not happen. So if it's happened, it's because the Lord has led it. So this person says all the time that. Thank you.
You should get more of that person's association. I need more of that association.